Imagine surviving 10 brutal years of war. Victory is yours, and home is only weeks away. Then, with a single decision, you make an enemy of one of the most powerful gods in existence. From that moment, the ocean turns against you. Every storm has your name on it. Your fleet is destroyed, your friends die one by one, and a journey of weeks stretches into another 10 grueling years. What could a mortal possibly do to earn the hatred of Poseidon? And could even the cleverest man in Greece survive a god determined to break him? Before he was the enemy of the sea, Odysseus was already a legend. He wasn't the strongest hero in Greece, that was Achilles. He wasn't the tallest or the fastest. What set Odysseus apart was his mind. While other kings relied on brute force, Odysseus trusted strategy. When others saw an impossible wall, he looked for a way around it. That mind ended the Trojan War. After a decade-long stalemate, Odysseus devised the Trojan horse, a deceptive surrender offering that hid Greek warriors inside its hollow belly. By sunrise, Troy had fallen. Odysseus became famous as the man who won a war through intellect. With Troy in ashes, Odysseus set sail for Ithaca. His wife, Penelope, had waited 10 years. His son, Telemachus, had grown up without a father. The hardest part of his life seemed over. He had outsmarted a kingdom. What could stand in his way now? He was about to find out. The voyage home began smoothly, but supplies soon ran low. Odysseus landed his fleet on an unfamiliar, quiet island to gather food. Exploring inland, he and his men discovered a massive cave filled with pens of healthy sheep and baskets overflowing with cheese. His men urged caution, take the food and leave. It was the smart choice. But Odysseus hesitated. In ancient Greece, host hospitality was a sacred duty protected by the gods. Odysseus believed the cave's owner would honor the tradition and offer gifts to weary travelers. He decided to wait. It was a choice he would regret for the rest of his life. At sunset, the ground shook. A towering figure entered, herding his flock, and slammed a gigantic boulder across the entrance, a stone so heavy no mortal strength could budge it. The creature was Polyphemus, a Cyclops, a giant with a single, furious eye in the middle of his forehead. When Odysseus asked for hospitality in the name of Zeus, the giant laughed. "I care nothing for Zeus," he mocked. Without another word, Polyphemus grabbed 2 Greek soldiers, smashed them against the stone floor, and devoured them raw. Trapped in the dark, Odysseus realized the trap he was in. Killing the giant in his sleep was impossible. Without Polyphemus's strength to move the boulder, they would all starve inside. He couldn't use force. He had to use cunning. The next night, Odysseus put his plan into motion. He offered the Cyclops an unmixed, dangerously potent wine taken from Troy. Polyphemus drank cup after cup until his mind was clouded and his speech slurred. Smiling down at his prisoner, the giant asked, "Tell me your name, stranger, and I will give you a gift." Odysseus replied calmly, "My name is Nobody." The drunken giant laughed. "Then, Nobody will be the last man I eat. That is my gift." Moments later, Polyphemus passed out. Odysseus and his men took a heavy wooden staff, sharpened its point, heated it in the fire until it glowed red, and drove it straight into the giant's eye. Polyphemus screamed in agony. His roaring brought other Cyclopes running to the cave entrance. "Polyphemus! Who is hurting you?" they shouted. The blinded giant roared back, "Nobody is hurting me. Nobody is trying to kill me." Hearing this, the other giants shrugged and walked away, leaving Polyphemus alone in his misery. At dawn, Polyphemus rolled back the stone just enough to let his sheep out, running his hands over their backs to catch any escaping Greeks. But Odysseus had already tied his men to the underside of the sheep, hidden by their thick wool. One by one, the survivors slipped past the blind giant and sprinted to their ships. They had escaped. Against impossible odds, Odysseus had beaten a monster through sheer wit. As the ship pulled away from the shore, victory surged through Odysseus. Far behind them, Polyphemus stood on the cliffs, roaring helplessly into the ocean. His men begged him to remain quiet and just row. But Odysseus couldn't bear the thought of his greatest triumph belonging to nobody. Ego took over. He stood at the bow and shouted across the water, "If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca." His men froze. Until that moment, they were safe. Now, they had given the monster a target. Polyphemus raised his face toward the sky and called out to his father, Poseidon, god of the sea. "Hear me, father. If I am truly your son, do not let Odysseus reach home. But if fate decrees he must return, let him return late, alone, having lost all his comrades, and to a house filled with trouble." It wasn't a prayer for Odysseus to die, it was a prayer for him to suffer. And Poseidon answered. Blinding Polyphemus was bad, boasting about it made it personal. Poseidon didn't kill Odysseus outright. Instead, he made the ocean a living nightmare. Whenever Ithaca appeared on the horizon, sudden tempests blew the fleet thousands of miles off course. Calm seas turned into towering walls of water. Year after year, the sea consumed Odysseus's fleet piece by piece. Cannibals destroyed his ships, sea monsters claimed his crew, divine lightning sank his final vessel. 10 years after leaving Troy, every single man who sailed with Odysseus was dead. Floating alone on a piece of driftwood, Odysseus washed ashore on remote islands, stripped of his wealth, his glory, and his friends. Polyphemus's prayer had been answered in full. Yet, despite a decade of divine torture, Poseidon failed in one crucial way: he couldn't break Odysseus's spirit. No matter how many storms battered his spirit, Odysseus kept reaching for home. He lacked the power of a god, but he possessed an inexhaustible capacity to endure. When Odysseus finally stepped foot on the shores of Ithaca after 20 total years away, he was a transformed man. The proud king who had shouted his name across the sea to a blinded monster had learned his lesson. He didn't march into his palace declaring his return. Instead, he entered his kingdom disguised as a humble beggar. He watched, waited, and acted only when the moment was right. His long punishment had forced him to trade hubris for humility. So, who truly won the war between the mortal and the god? If victory meant causing endless suffering, Poseidon won. But if victory meant breaking a man's resolve, the god lost. In the end, Odysseus reached his home, reclaimed his throne, and proved that while a god can command the ocean, a human spirit determined to push forward can endure any storm.